Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Progressive Pals podcast. I am Brentley, and here with me is a kind of it should be an interesting time. We have Chris Christensen, the Christian. We have Dallas, who is I want to say you're a deist. Is that correct?
I don't know, man. The term, I guess so convoluted with the terms. Like you could call me a theist. Like I don't know if deist is like, yeah. I mean, I don't know, somewhere between theist and deist, or I even like the term. Oh shit! Now forgot forgot it off the top of my head. You keep talking. I'll come up with it in a minute.
Okay, no, that's all right. Yeah, we're
You
just
sound confused enough to be agnostic.
which I would argue is the most reasonable position to take, but but yeah, so I mean, we had some ideas about different things to talk about because it's just I'm so kind of want to hear where you guys end up disagreeing too, because I know that's probably going to come up at some point. Kyle, what's up, man? Thanks for watching. Um, so I know I'm pretty sure I know. I feel like I know anyway. Where Dallas, where you're at when it comes to like the gun issues that have been going on, or that people have been bringing up lately. But I'm not really sure if I know your position on this, Chris. Chris.
I always honestly thought that Canadians didn't really give a rip about guns and gun control. Um, then I started talking to Canadians about it, and apparently we actually do care more about it than I thought.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, yeah. From what I've heard anyway, from a couple of the friends that I have, that are Canadian, they're like, yeah, dude, like it just depends where you're at, I guess. If you're in like what's that one? Is it Albany? No, not Albany.
Alberta,
Alberta. That's it. Yeah. I want to say
yeah,
Albany, but it's not. I'm like, no, that's in America.
I got to be careful because I got friends from there, but I would definitely say Alberta is like the Texas of Canada. Um,
Right. So they like
uh,
guns there, that's for sure, right?
but I live on the left coast, so it's not as. um,
Oh, okay.
it's funny. Have you guys ever heard of the comedian Jim Jeffries?
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the Australian guy.
yeah. He has a Netflix special called Bear, and I didn't like most of it, but he had one section where he's talking about gun control, and he at least made some interesting points. One of them was, that you're more likely to shoot yourself, or your kids are more likely to get their hands on a gun. And now, obviously, the response from people that are anti-gun control is like, "Well, I put my gun in a safe, I keep it locked up, I'm responsible." And he's like, "Well, then how is it protection? If you got it every time somebody breaks into your house, you're like, hold on 1 minute, just let me go to my gun, get my this gate, get
Wait,
the gun out."
Take
And
10
yeah.
locks off, like gotta do all yeah.
so
Wait,
I thought that was an
I
important point, but
I do
Yeah.
have one thing to say about that particular stat because I hear that stated a lot, and I think often too what people do, and I don't know if this is always dishonest. I think sometimes it's just sloppy reasoning or sloppy use of statistics. But what's often included in that statistic in order people to say that, like, oh, you're more likely to hurt yourself, is they include suicides in with that statistic. So they lump like gun accidents or like your kid getting a gun and shooting themselves or some or a friend or something. They lump that in with suicides, which to me, well, to any thinking person, and those things need to be clearly differentiated. Those are clearly very two different categories of things. One is an accident. One is not a not intended, and the suicide is a very intentional use of a gun. So I think it's important that those things are differentiated.
I mean, but that's like why we have like waiting times and stuff, because like a lot of times people will change their mind about stuff, right? So like they're like go to a shop, right, to buy a gun, to commit suicide, right? And then they're like, oh, you got to wait 48 hours, and then those 48 hours go by, and then now they're not like, they're like, wait, I kind of rethought this thing, and I'm kind of glad that I didn't do what I was gonna do 2 days ago or whatever. Um, so I mean, it's like having the availability of guns still does affect suicide the same as it would accidents. But I see what you're saying. Like they can differentiate it, right? But I think it's still all things that we need to consider, because you wouldn't kill yourself a lot of times if you didn't have that easy ass way to do it.
Yeah, I mean it's not an unreasonable thought. Like there does become issues kind of implementation wise and practically speaking, and concerns about who decides. That's a common question conservatives ask about everything, which is true. Anytime we're dealing with any kind of political discussion, the issue isn't always like what's a reasonable thing to do. The question is who decides often, right? So it's like, does how much do we allow bureaucrats to make these decisions for who gets to have guns and for what reasons? And I'm not saying the answer should be never should they be involved ever, but I think it's an important question to ask. And I personally at least lean way more in the direction of kind of the individualistic perspective of individual rights as it relates to guns, or I mean a lot of things, not just guns. But
Could we say that the people choose? Like, I mean, we vote on it, and then we choose. Like, we shouldn't. I don't think we should take it from what's the like a republic position where we elect people and then they make the decision, right? Like that's a republic, right? I
yeah,
don't
I
think
mean
we should take it from that. It should be voted on. You know
I
what I
mean,
mean?
that's an element of it. I mean, we at least in America have the representative democracy or republic, but at the same time too, we also on based on the Second Amendment have the fundamental right to bear arms. So that's there. I don't think there's any other country in the world that actually in their federal constitution have the right to bear arms the way that the Americans do. And some people think that's the positive. I think it's a positive thing. Some people think it's a negative thing. And I would point to the there's way more people who have been murdered by their government who have disarmed them, and that's usually and I'm not saying every country who doesn't have the right to bear arms is necessarily going to lead into a tyranny, but we can say for certain that every country that did become tyrannical, where there was like murderous things going on, whether it be the Soviet Union or the Nazis or Mao's China or whatever. That was a step that was taken, and there's far more people who have been murdered by their governments than individuals have, let's say, by like a lone wolf shooter at a mall or a school or something.
Okay, yeah, that's true. What do you think about that, Chris?
Yeah, what I balance it with is like concern for people's well-being. Obviously, I don't want tyrannical dictators to run the country. I'd prefer to avoid that if I can. Um, on the other hand, and I don't want people to be assaulted or taken advantage of. Like I can totally appreciate where Dallas is coming from on that. But then again, as a Christian too, one of my overriding concerns is like, okay, how do I balance wanting to make sure people are protected, that the innocents aren't harmed, but at the same time also love your enemies, turn the other cheek, doing where,
Yeah.
you know, demanding or blowing somebody away with a 9 clip doesn't seem like really quite what Jesus had in mind that way.
I mean, have you ever heard people use the Bible verse where they were like Jesus said to like go get your sword or something, like sell your coat and buy a sword? And there's like a verse that Jesus says that, and
Yeah, my general response to that is just that it's really hard to build a doctrine of weapons off of one verse that there is no solid agreement among scholars on about what's going on there. Some people look at that and they're like, yeah, they were about to go up a mountain, and all that Jesus was commanding them to carry was machetes to help cut through the undergrowth. I'm not sure if I go with that. Other people think that he was like, yeah, maybe it was like kind of it was a way to make them look like bandits, like so that there was more of a pretense for him to get arrested, but it wasn't that he actually intended for them to use it. But like back to my original point, it's just there's no consensus, so it's really hard to say that yeah, that's the verse that proves that Jesus would be okay with guns.
I have a theological question for Chris. So, do you believe that love your enemies? Do you believe that like in an absolute sense, or do you believe that there are any caveats to that? Like, do you think hating someone is ever merited, or I'll end with that and let you answer that.
I don't know. Like I said, I definitely believe like okay, so in Romans, it talks about the government having the right to bear sword and like keep order that way, right? So in that sense, there does seem to be at least argument for the weapons to be used by the government. But when I look at like the ultimate innocent victim who was brutally assaulted and didn't try to defend himself, that's Jesus on the cross saying, Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing. And so I'm like, if it's talking about an absolute sense, like if Jesus is the ultimate example as a Christian, then that one seems more powerful.
Like,
About
do you
what love your enemies.
like do you think it's reasonable to hate let's say like Kim Jong Un or Hitler or something like that, like are there certain people that it's like you should, because I'll give you my opinion first too, like and this is maybe a little bit more Old Testament ish. I know there's a verse that's just like those that love God must hate evil. And I know you could interpret that different ways, in terms of whether, you should hate the person or whether you should hate just the action. But I do believe that there are certain people that are just fundamentally evil at their core, like, say Hitler or Kim Jong Un or somebody like that. So I do believe like there are, the way that I would take that is to say that I do think it's merited to hate people that are at least on that level, that are like, that I believe, and maybe you don't even believe that people are fundamentally evil. Maybe you do, but anyways, I'm curious to get your thoughts on that.
I found, when I first heard about Hitler, Kim Jong Un, the worst examples of human history that way.
Yeah.
When I
Like
first heard
serial
about
killers too, you could put in there. You know what I
yeah,
Yeah,
mean? Like Charles
murder,
Manson and shit, right?
yeah, Jeffrey Dahmer.
Dahmer.
yeah,
Yep, there you go.
it was really easy to hate them at the beginning, and to feel like like there's nothing like who wouldn't hate these guys. But I've just found, I guess, the more that I like gotten to understand my own faith, the more that I've gotten to, I feel like I've started to understand like Jesus's heart for people. I found that I actually feel more sympathy for people that are so twisted, are so broken, are so dark themselves. Not saying again that they shouldn't have been stopped, but no, I don't hate them. I just ultimately feel pity for them.
Yeah, I actually, I kind of agree with you. I mean, I always feel like having hate in your heart's like not good for the individual. Like, I don't feel like that's good for me. You know what I mean?
I mean,
Um,
yeah, I mean, there's a place you can take hate to where it becomes, it can consume you, and especially if it's not filtered through a useful lens. So like if, okay, as an example, if you're like, for me to spend my daily existence like just deeply spending my time like hating, like, I don't know, some dictator or serial killer or whatever, like I just hate him so much and just driving around and I just hate it. That's I don't think there's any bit of any doctrine, religious or otherwise, that would kind of back up that as being moral or sensible. But I do think there is, like, okay, let's say you're in the military. and you have to go and let's say you're either Winston Churchill, if we're talking about 1930s, or maybe we're doing something with Putin. Maybe we have to do. I think having a filtered sense of contempt or hatred or whatever word you want to use towards people like that, as long as, like I said, as long as it's filtered in a way that's not, that you're not like going off the rails, like, and it's not like, and it's being filtered in a useful way. That's how I think about. Oh, one more thought too, in terms of like love and hate. The way I view love and hate is, love means nothing if you love everyone equally. Now that's my view, because if I say I love you, like Brent, I love you, Brent, and if I literally told every fucking person, if I told Hitler, like, I love you, Hitler, the word love doesn't mean a damn. It loses all sense of meaning. It doesn't mean anything at that point.
Yeah, it's like kind of like when they say like all kids are special, and it's like, yeah, but
Yeah,
they're
yeah,
actually
exactly.
no,
Yeah.
they're not. They're not. Some kids are just fucking kids, man. Uh, but yeah, I feel you
but
on
I'm
that.
but I'm sure Chris has a slightly different perspective on that. I'm sure.
Right? Oh yeah.
Well, yeah, I get what you're saying on that. I guess it's kind of a cliche, but I guess if there was a filter, I would think of it would be just, you might not hate the person, you might hate what they do, and that, when you have that perspective, like, okay, you guys both know, like, I'm really involved in like the pro life movement, and like, I honestly believe abortion is slaughtering children daily when it happens, right? And it'd be very easy to feel hatred for the people, but again, I don't hate them. I feel pity for them, but I definitely hate what they're doing, and I just find that it's way more productive to hate the action than the person, because hatred of the action makes me want to talk to people more and have more productive conversations. Whereas if I was just hating people that were having abortions or performing abortions, I wouldn't be trying to talk to them. I would probably be like some of the more extreme groups out there that are like screaming at them and doing like,
Holding up signs and when they're trying to go into the place and stuff. Do you have like a lot of I feel like Canada is pretty solid on that, like solidly pro choice on that, correct?
oh yeah, we have no real abortion restrictions in Canada. They'll say we do, but like, the restrictions are wide enough that you could drive a semi truck through. It's legal at all stages. So it's
To all the way.
and
So it's even more beyond. So it's even beyond Roe, because Roe's like, well, I mean, the Roe isn't until up to the last second. It's like, what, 3 months or something like that, 3 or 4 months.
Roe was pretty open too. I mean, their only stipulation was it just has to be either for the mental or the physical health of the woman. Well,
Oh,
that's
that too. Yeah, up at the
so.
to the
Mental.
last second. Yeah.
I love like mental health. So that which whenever I ever hear legislators or see legislators that put those kind of language into things, it's always meant to be kind of a little kind of backdoor caveat. It's like, yeah, it's like, we're gonna sneak this language in, so basically you can do whatever you want.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, yeah. I mean, I guess, but see, I feel like you have to. I don't know. I don't. I feel like there's too many like edge cases and situations that arise that you have. It has to be legal. I don't know. I mean, I see. I mean, I meet people halfway and be like, we can put some restrictions on it or whatever. But like, I'm just like banning it is just insane to me. I feel like that's nuts. But
The way I think about it too, even though I'm like mostly in Chris's camp on this issue, um, I I think the primary goal in any legislation or just with society in general is to kind of move the goalpost in the right direction, or move the ball in the right direction, so to speak. So, like, if I could get my more pro-choice opponents, shall we say, to just, if I was in a legislative position, say, okay, like, ideologically, philosophically, morally, etc., we're not going to completely ever be on the same page, more than likely. But here's kind of what maybe we can meet in the middle somewhere. Like maybe we could say that, okay, like, you're concerned about, X, Y, and Z, and you think having legal abortions might be helpful for those particular reasons or cases. I also think that at clearly at some point that in a pregnancy throughout the stages that you're clearly dealing with a human being. So like maybe there's somewhere, at least legislatively, I'll kind of concede some ground if you'll be willing to concede some ground. Like if you'll back off, because in America now it seems like the pro choice movement has gone way away from this kind of safe, legal, and rare idea to abortion on demand for any reason. Like it's a woman's body, her choice, like at any point, period. And so if I could maybe get my opponents to move a little bit on that, maybe I would be willing to move a little bit on mine as well.
And have it be like a federal thing, like you'd be okay with it being for all the states?
Well, that's
Because
that's
that's the
yeah,
weird thing.
that's a
Oh, okay.
separate case of issue. Because I'm a big believer. I believe in kind of the American institutions and the way I believe in kind of the founding ideals of the way everything is set up. I think the institutions are pretty good. It's not perfect because there's no such thing as a perfect institution, but like I like the idea of the way the Supreme Court is supposed to function, the way they're supposed to interpret and understand the Constitution. And again, all of this is run by human beings, so it's gonna be messy and flawed and whatnot. But no, but if we could get a consensus on
Oh, shit.
That's a great still.
That's good. Oh, that sucks. I think I know what he was gonna say though. He was saying, "Oh, are you
the
back? Okay, you're back."
sorry.
Okay, saying as long as we get a consensus on, and then you cut out. So what were you saying?
Yeah.
Consensus on what?
Yeah, so like related to like the American Constitution, either something is written into it as as an amendment to the Constitution, or it becomes a state's issue. So
Right.
I would be. I mean, if we could get a consensus on having a constitutional amendment about abortion, whether it be banning it or making it federally legal, then fine. Then I may not like how that came out. I may not like the results of that, but I do believe that is how the institution of the Supreme Court and all that's supposed to work.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, like so, like a majority rules kind of situation. I mean,
Um,
the problem I feel like right now is that it's actually a minority position, but it's a majority position on the Supreme Court. But the position of the Supreme Court does not make up what I think the majority of people want, in their
well,
cities and
the
stuff.
the problem the role of the Supreme Court isn't supposed to be to represent a majority of anything the Supreme Court is only supposed to be people who judge the Constitution, hopefully in a fair and accurate way, which I don't think always is the case. I think people often just rule based upon ideological leanings than what is actually kind of more reasonable legal interpretation. But
Because that's the thing about law too, is right. Like you can always, it's like it almost like leaves everything open to where you can argue almost anything, right? Like the whole, like the gun, like with the Supreme Court did that with, I think it was with the Supreme, I think the Supreme Court did it with the guns, where they basically reinterpreted the Second Amendment to be like, oh, this is like everybody's right to have arms, and they
that's
took
not
out like the whole well-regulated militia thing, and like, oh, that's that's like that's not even there. It's like that was totally well-regulated militia is
what.
right there,
Well, what I think what you're doing is the reinterpretation of it. So, like, if you actually read the text, like, and I would encourage anyone who's questioning what the Second Amendment says or how it should be properly interpreted, go to someone who's an expert linguist and ask them to read the Second Amendment, how it's worded. I'm trying to remember exactly what it says off the top of my head. But like the right to bear arms, in order to secure a free state. Again, I'm
Yeah.
paraphrasing a little bit, and the ability to have a well-regulated militia. The right of the people shall not be to bear arms shall not be infringed. That's essentially what it says.
Yeah.
So the right. So the right of the people. So first off, okay, let's just go down this rabbit hole for a minute. Like,
Okay, let's do it.
okay, so the what is a militia? First off, like,
it's very similar, like the Oath Keepers and stuff like that, which to me is kind of freaky. But I think back in the day, it said to make sure that there's a free state. So it almost seems like it's some type of army or something for the particular state, right?
Yeah, like
According to their wording,
like it's basically an unofficial army. Like, it's not like a government regulated, like coming top down. It's basically, militia is basically a group of people just coming together. Like, it's not officially the way we think of most armies are today, which are official government regulated entities. So that's important, first off, right? Because like it's not. So if a militia, the only way a militia is regulated is kind of a self-regulation, because who's regulating a militia? Like the government's not regulating the militia. The whole point of a militia is that it's not a top-down government thing. So that's something to think about. But then think about the most important line, which is the right of the people shall not be infringed. So the people are the ones who have to have the right to bear arms, and the people get together and form the militia, which isn't a government entity, and thereby, just by pure logical understanding of what that is, it isn't something that's going to be regulated by the government.
So who would it be regulated by? What do they mean by? Because you kind of said like sort of stumbled over that. What does that even mean? You're like, why would they even put regulated in the amendment then? Like, what is it? Who are they talking about regulating it? Like from within them regulating themselves? That's really where we're going with this? That's
well, that may be a question that's better answered by a historian, and particularly a historian who understands the linguistics of the time. But one thing that's absolutely undeniable is that what the essence of what a militia is. A militia is not a government regulated body. It's not.
right. Let me see here. Actually, let me look up militia. I'm just curious if it has like multiple definitions.
I mean, they were trying to.
What's up? It says a military force that is raised from the civil population to supplement a regular army in an emergency. That's that's the first definition. So it says it's supposed to supplement the army in an emergency. It's also a military force that engages in rebel or terrorist activities in opposition to a regular army. Okay, that's not good. That's probably not what they meant, right? All able-bodied civilians eligible for law for military service. I had no idea. All able-bodied civilians eligible for law or eligible by law for military service. So, I don't know. I'd have to. You're absolutely right. We'd have to talk to somebody that knows the language of the time and is like, a bit more familiar with that, because I don't know what they meant by militia. And again, it's like a big part of constitutional law is interpreting.
And I agree on your comment about like what does that even mean, well regulated? I honestly don't know what they meant by it, but it seems clear. It seems fairly clear that like that when they say the right of the people shall not be infringed, that the people are the individuals of the society. I'm the people. You're the people. We're the people.
Yeah, exactly. No, I think you're right. I think that it does mean that we can have guns. I think that, but I think that that doesn't mean that it's just there's no regulation whatsoever. I think
I believe that is
I
what was meant at the time. Now, granted, you can make this like kind of modern argument, which I agree with in principle about like, oh, well, they didn't have nuclear weapons. We can't let people have nuclear weapons, and I agree. We can't have individual people can't have nuclear weapons. So yeah, there are there
the,
are
the
modern
line has to
problem
go
issues.
somewhere. Yeah.
Sure.
Right, yeah, because we have to me it reminds me a lot of abortion. Like we have to put the line somewhere. Where do we put it? Where do we decide when a human becomes a human? When do we decide like what's a tank too much? Okay, can we go down? Okay, rocket launcher, is that too much? Where's the line at? Let's find the find the line of that's the best place to that's makes keeps us all safe. Able to protect ourselves, but also capable of like or not capable of mass murder. I would say, right? Like we don't want
Yeah.
that's where I think, and so a lot of these, and I know this drives people nuts, but I'm going to try to do my best to not upset the gun people. So, platform rifles, right? Isn't that what they're called? I know you're not saying like assault style weapons. Like that's not a thing, man. That's not a fucking thing. Okay, I got it. All right, but
Protection
platform
rifles.
rifles, huh? What's up?
Protection rifles.
Say that one more time.
Sorry, protection rifles.
Protection rifles. There you go. Like, but they have like these platform rifles that because platform like is like the kind the kind that have like the little thing that folds out and it's like so you can steady the gun or whatever. Um, it's like any place that can have that hooked onto it, right? A platform or something to steady it. And those are the weapons that are used 9 times out of 10, like over actually more than that. It's over 90% of mass shootings are like the AR-15. It's really like the main one. And other guns that are styled like very similar to that, like platform weapons, basically platform rifles.
Well, arguably, if like the main concern is protection against somebody breaking into your house, generally you might get one or two people at a time breaking in. Usually, you don't have an entire squad coming after you. So
That's
it's
true.
See,
yeah,
it is. But it is important to remember too. And I know like the quote unquote progressives like mock this, and I have plenty of decent rebuttals to theirs. So, but they mock the idea of the Second Amendment is not intended. It's not about hunting, and it's not even about as much about home protection as much as it is like protection from a tyrannical government to the people. If the government, for whatever reasons, however that may occur, that the people can come together, form a militia or whatever. I mean, the word militia is, I mean, it's almost irrelevant because what's important is that the people have the right to the arms. Therefore, if they decide they need to come together to fight any force, tyrannical force or whatever, they have their guns and they can just get together and do that. Um,
See, that kind
and
of freaks me out though, because like, shit, people were saying that that the election was stolen, and they were thinking like, oh man, like that's tyrannical. They didn't just give it to Trump because Trump said that it was stolen so many times. Like they could think that that's tyrannical. They're like, oh, we better get a militia to go in to murder the incumbent, whatever
I mean,
president. Like,
yeah, I get what you're saying, but like no, okay, like the January 6th thing, which like most conservatives just kind of like face palm and go, oh man, y'all are making us look bad over here, but it no nobody that I'm aware of showed up with guns at all. Like the only person who was killed was the Ashley Babbitt woman who was unarmed, and she was killed by one of the Capitol police officers. As far as I'm aware, nobody was nobody was killed from the other from the other way around. And as far as I'm aware, I don't even know if there was anybody there that had a single gun at all. I mean, maybe there were a few possibly. But I haven't heard. I
yeah.
haven't heard it.
No,
So I
you're
mean,
right. I mean, they didn't bring them there was like a couple people that admitted later. They said we were going to go back for our guns. They had stockpiled their weapons. Like I
Right.
mean, saying like a lot of weapons in like their vehicles, but they
Yeah.
were like going to make sure to secure everything first and not get like tagged on the way in, right? And
Hmm.
then so they were like, then we'll go back get our weapons, and then we'll come back do this military
But
tribunal so we can wait for JFK to get back here and we can solve this whole thing, you know? Um,
but
like,
yeah, but my whole point is that like if the people who thought the election was stolen really really thought it was like tyrannical thing on a level that like the government needed to be overthrown, then there are hundreds of millions of people in this country that do have guns, and if we really thought that the we had a tyranny problem on our hands, you would know about it.
oh, so you're saying that you don't think they do? They did actually. They
I,
You don't think they actually think of it like as tyrannical like that? Like,
I think it was LARPing bored internet dwellers with who conspiracy theorists to a certain extent that that had nothing better to do with their time than to like to show up and wreak a little havoc, but not in a way that's like, oh yeah, we're gonna overthrow the government. If even if the people that showed up that like caused havoc, even if they believe that, they would have been showing up with guns.
right. I was honestly really surprised that they didn't. I'm gonna be completely honest with you, and like I could not believe that when I saw. I was like, everybody's gonna get killed here. Holy shit! Look at all these people going. Because I was watching it as it was happening, on Twitter and shit. They were posting the videos, and I was like, oh man, everybody's gonna fucking be shooting at each other and shit. It's gonna be terrible. But no, you were right. Like, no, they didn't bring guns like I thought they would. But yeah, I was very glad that they were much more sensible than I gave them credit for, to be honest.
Like, oh great, the Americans are going to have a civil war.
Another one. Yeah, Jesus. Yeah, what do you
the
think about all this,
Now
the
it's
Chris?
sequel. I've been waiting for the sequel.
The sequel, Jesus. Part 2 or whatever.
Duh. Yeah, like Hot Shots.
Yeah.
my
But yeah, what do you think about it, Chris? Was it just like that's was it like that's what you were thinking? You're like, oh great, we're gonna
yeah,
have a
well,
civil
basically
war.
that, but I mean, I had the other thought, which is like, again, I'm mostly just riffing off this one stand-up comedian that I listened to because I just heard it yesterday. So, but sometimes I wonder, like, okay, let's say America or even Canada suddenly had a tyrannical dictator show up and start like really trying to enforce his will. I'm just wondering how many of the average Americans with guns will actually be because the tyrannical dictator will have a trained military backing him up, and I'm wondering how many of the militia, how many of the average Americans with guns are going to be like ready to stand and fight when they're facing a fully armed. Well, you guys have Navy SEALs, for example. Like, how many of them would actually fight, and how many would be like, okay, I'm just going to go home now, even though they have guns.
Right.
Yeah, I
Or just
mean,
be like, don't come in my house or I'll shoot you. Like just
yeah,
barricade the door and like,
right.
you know, uh, but
Yeah,
go
well,
on, what were you saying?
I think that would depend on kind of the level of encroachment. So obviously, the more you encroach on, it's like, okay, there's a certain percentage of people who are like really politically engaged who would like be willing to go to war over some political spat or some perception of tyranny, and maybe debatable to what extent that is even true. But that's the smaller percentage. The larger percentage of people that are willing to fight is when whatever the government is doing is seriously harming their personal individual lives, their own ability. And some of the COVID stuff was starting to worry me in terms of getting people riled up and going in that direction. Because whatever, again, regardless of whatever your opinions are on how some of the COVID stuff was handled, like the more the government like comes in, like when they're telling people to shutting people's businesses down, and now people with small businesses can't go to work and don't know how to make money, etc. People you start putting people in a position where they both feel desperate, and now they have someone to blame, which is, whether it be their governor or people in the federal government or whatever. You people who are desperate, they're being kind of imped upon, shall we say. And they have someone that they can point to and say it's your fault. That when it was that is a powder keg for violence. So I mean, I think it's a really good thing, like, some like that starting to back off on that stuff a little bit. But yeah, so I mean, whatever the situation may be, whether it be, something like a COVID situation, or it be something way worse, or something much less defensible. uh, you got to be careful as soon as you start affecting people's individual lives and their abilities to, just go to work or just go outside for that matter.
See, I feel like in Canada, we definitely have a way more totalitarian government than down in the States. Like, I could be wrong on this. I'm not really that up on politics, but just as a couple of examples, a few years ago, uh, our prime minister tried to make churches sign a piece of paper saying, if you want government grants, you'll have to sign this piece of paper that says, I support abortion, I support homosexuality. And they're like, if you want any help from the government with your summer programs and stuff, you need to sign this piece of paper. Regardless of whether you agree with the church's position or not, there is such a thing as freedom of conscience, freedom of religion, and that's supposed to be respected, right? And Christians, myself included, wrote emails and protested, and we're just like, you can't require this of us. Like, this is stupid. And
Right.
thankfully, the government backed down. But then also, in response to the amount of people not getting vaccinated in Canada, they started something up here called vaccine passports. And so if you wanted to go into a restaurant, if you wanted to go into theater, if you wanted to do any of that, you had to produce a passport that showed that you were vaccinated. And that
Yeah.
lasted for about 4 months, I think.
Wow.
And so, like, yeah, that's what I mean about the totalitarian thing is, yeah, like our government
Well,
has a lot
and
more.
didn't they even do like emergency powers to like, and
Yeah,
because like all the truckers were doing their thing and he like used some sort of emergency power, but he dissolved them like immediately after, which I was like, because this is like the slippery slope everybody's talking about. And then he just, no, never mind, forget, it wasn't like like a takeover or anything like that, or taking away everybody's rights or nothing. It was just like, no, they're just solving one crisis, which was really fucking shit up. The truckers, blocking everything.
that's true.
Um,
And I mean,
good
it's
point.
like I wasn't really in support of the truckers convoy, although I understood why they were doing it. It's just, but I just kind of wished everybody would just get the vaccine because
Right, yeah,
yeah,
me too. I know.
I was just like, I just really want this to end. But
Yeah.
at the same time, yeah, it scared me when Trudeau took the emergency powers because he was also the same guy that tried to force churches to sign a piece of paper that they didn't agree with. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not sure I trust
Mm,
this guy with that amount of power. Um,
right.
and there's an irony in it that I always see though, is usually when I hear the term liberal, I know it's not the same, but I still tend to think like liberty, freedom,
Yeah.
things like that.
Yeah. Right. I mean, that's supposed to be the point, right? I mean, it was originally, I think for the liberals or whatever, like that means you use something liberally. If you use something liberally, it means you use it a lot. Like you just you don't really care how much you use it, whatever.
But they
Um,
seem that the liberal government up here almost seems to be way more controlling and like I said, totalitarian than even most conservative governments. Like our conservative government up here, most of the people on it don't support abortion. Like they think the same thing that I do, but they're not willing to even broach the issue in Parliament anymore. Like they'll just
really? Oh wow.
every time it comes up, they're like, "Oh yeah, we're not going to bring it up. Don't worry about us."
Wow.
And but it's the liberals that are trying to force everything. that pulled the trump card of trying to get everybody to enforce what they thought was morally right on that, and it's usually when everybody's worried about it the other way,
Hmm.
you know.
That's interesting. Yeah, I have like heard that a lot because I was like raised in the punk scene like we were talking about a bit before, and I think it was like all these punkers and stuff are going to the right because they're like, oh man, all the left is like uh
Johnny
saying we can't say
Rotten.
stuff or whatever, yeah.
Johnny Rotten's total was a total trumper.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, dude. Oh god, I can't stand Johnny Rat. I mean, but I mean, don't get me wrong. I like the band. The Sex Pistols is great, but like, they had like one album, dude. Like, I don't know,
Right.
it's whatever. Um, but yeah. But so I get like that whole notion. But I think at the same time, at this point, I think we've just moved farther beyond that now. I think we just are. Uh, we have to kind of just try not to hurt each other. That seems to be the main thing. We have to have rules in place to keep people from getting hurt, and because I mean, in Canada, you'd have like different freedom of speech laws, right? Like you can't.
I even looked into what our freedom of speech laws are. I should do that sometime. But
I feel like I remember Kevin was going over them with me the one time, and he said like you could never like say anything that would encourage people to do harm or something like that. Like you could say like Justin Trudeau is a fuckhead or something like that. But if
then
you said like Justin Trudeau should be taken over by a whatever, and says like they should, somebody should get him out of office and to hurt him or something like that. You can't say that. Like you can't say that part of it. You know.
The
interesting.
the one thing I'll say too about like at least freedom of speech here in America. Obviously, we still have like the most robust freedom of speech here than pretty much anywhere else in the world. But even the caveats. So there are some caveats that are very clear. Like you can't incite violence, and you can't knowingly lie about people and in a way that's gonna like harm their life or career or whatever. If you can prove that there was kind of harm caused in court, you can sue someone for things that they said. So there literally is no such thing as absolute freedom of speech. But there is one that does annoy me slightly that I hear all the time that I even sort of accepted the premise for the longest time until I've heard certain legal scholars, and I can't think of their names off the top of my head or anything. Otherwise, I tell you. But that so, there's that whole trope about you can't yell fire in a crowded theater, and
Right.
so
Unless there's a real fire.
yeah,
Unless
yeah,
yeah, this was
and
an
there
actual fire.
and there are multiple caveats to that. Obviously, yes, if there is a real fire, you can yell fire in a crowded theater, but but also too, that that whole law surrounding that is not actually about the speech of the word. Has nothing to do with the speech of the word fire. It has to do with whether or not you actually incited something. So if you yell fire in a crowded theater and everyone's just like that
Right. And
nothing's going to happen to you legally speaking because you didn't incite anything, right? So it's not about the words you said, it's about the potential cause and effect of if you cause a riot, then that is the illegal thing. It's not the words.
it's the consequences of the word, right? So it
Right.
almost be like I almost wonder if the same things like yelling shark at a crowded beach, and like six people
Yeah.
die, right? Because you
Oh
were like
yeah.
shark,
Yeah.
okay,
No,
and
it's the
like,
same. Yeah, it's the same principle, basically.
but
Mm.
the consequences have to happen in order for that to be the case, right?
Yeah, at least with the example that I cited, and maybe there are things about the shark thing too. I've never heard that specific example. Any legal case surrounding that specific example, but there might be.
I'm in Florida, so I've done that
Yeah.
like 7 times. So I mean, I
Right.
haven't gotten arrested yet.
Yeah.
So
But it's a perfect comparison. It's the exact same principle.
right, yeah, yeah. It is an interesting concept because like when we're looking at like freedom of speech, like these saying like that would cause a bunch of harm, right? And that seems to be what we're looking at, a lot these days is like a lot of like hate speech and stuff causes harm. It gets people riled up. I mean, shit, we just like busted another militia, basically a group that was going to go in and like a gay bash at the gay pride parade.
Do you have a working definition for hate? Like, okay, you're not. I just want to be clear. You're not saying hate speech is a legal category, are you? Or like, what? I'm trying to get what exactly are you saying about like the concept of hate speech?
I'm just saying, like when it comes to like things like that, like getting people organized to go hurt people and stuff like that. I think that's when it gets dangerous.
Well,
You know what I mean?
I agree. You absolutely can't do that. I don't think there's well, it's not that I don't think. I know at least in America there's no such thing as a legal category of hate speech. At least
Yeah.
not yet anyways. So it's like you can be as hateful as you want. You can say the meanest things that you possibly want to say, and you probably shouldn't like, but all the
Right.
time. Though
Someone will
yeah, I just
film you,
want
and then you'll get fired, and then you'll,
yeah,
and they'll
yeah,
hire you.
yeah. Well, yeah. There's, I mean, yeah. There's, social. There's, yeah, legal consequences, and then there's social consequences as well. Which is, yeah. It's like if you don't want to get fired from your job, you might not want to, be caught on camera, saying the N word or something.
Exactly, right? Be a good place to start. You
Yeah,
know? Yeah, it is interesting. I'm not, I don't definitely don't think that it does have a legal definition yet. I think you're right about that. Um, I think it probably should, but I think it should be very stark what is considered hate speech and what isn't. You know what I mean? But
especially
and,
since people like sometimes equate hate speech with just saying I don't think this is right or I disagree with it.
Yeah.
Like,
right,
because by the like obviously, let's say with like the gay marriage debate, right? Like a lot of times you get shut down if you say you disagree with it because they're like, oh, that's hate speech. But then the person will turn around and tell me that they disagree with me as a Christian or that they think Christianity is evil, and that like all of a sudden that's just
that's just speech.
right. It's like,
No,
well,
yeah, I wouldn't think that should be hate speech. Like it should have to be the words, like the really harmful like words and you see these words being used a whole bunch, that these groups, it gets people riled up, and they start to organize and whatnot, and then they literally try to go gay bash, like they used to back in the
right.
70s and 80s, But that's why I say like the definition has to be very, plain and simple. Like this word is hate speech, whatever. Like the N word, it's hate speech. The
Not
FAG word, if you were like FAG, that like they can't get married or whatever, if you're saying like that, then that'd be hate speech. But if you're just like, I just don't believe gay people should get married, I wouldn't say that's hate speech. I just
Though there's obviously an inherent problem with making any word illegal, and obviously there was a time in this country where there were obscenity laws where there were words like that you couldn't legally say, at least not publicly, which I'm not for. But there's the problem of words. Words have no intrinsic value other than what we put upon them. So it's like, and then obviously the context involved. So it's like, you know how much rap music, if you were like, the N word is illegal, you know how much rap music we would have to like ban.
right. That's true. Because I mean, then you'd have to be like, this has to apply to everybody. I'm like, no, it doesn't apply to that. Like, you can't. Yeah, I mean, that would
Yeah,
be a mess
yeah.
trying to explain
Then
it.
you run into like racial discrimination law. And again, I'm no legal scholar. I don't know exactly how all these things, but it just seems like a convoluted situation. Anytime you're like, all right, you can't say this word. It's like, well, what about this context? Oh yeah, you can say it in that context, but not this other context.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, I know it can get. I don't think we're gonna go that route. To be honest, I think
Yeah.
honestly, the way that these like honest the companies and stuff, private companies have really been the ones more putting the ropes out there, like control the speech because these platforms, that's all you do is talk on them, right?
No,
And so they were the ones deciding, you know, what speech, what kinds of words specifically, what kinds of words they would want on their platform at all.
Did you ever see the interview that Tim Pool did on Joe Rogan's show, where it was Tim Pool, obviously Joe, and then Jack Dorsey of Twitter, and then I forget one of his like secondhand people. I forget her name. Did either one of y'all happen to see that when that
I
was
feel
out?
like I've seen clips from it, but I can't remember. It's been a minute.
Because
But
that
I think I know
there
what you're talking about.
there was a part of that conversation that was really interesting, to where Tim Pool, and actually the interesting part about it, at least the most interesting part in my opinion, was that Jack and I forget her name, like Sanjaya or something like that, like but they didn't. He was trying to explain to them why their Twitter rules were designed to be completely biased against the conservative worldview, and they didn't quite understand. Like, and Tim was kind of explaining to them, like particularly around like some like the trans stuff. So like Tim's trying to explain to him, it's like the way like most conservative people don't actually believe in the constructs that maybe you or the people that dominate your company believe in. So therefore, you're kind of skewing the conversation abilities to where only your particular worldview on that issue can be represented in the speech. And Tim's absolutely right on that. Regardless of what side of that debate you fall on or what worldview you hold related to that issue, he's absolutely right. But I found it so interesting, and I see this commonly actually when there's conversations like this. As sometimes it's hard convincing people, particularly more left leaning, to that they hold biases that they didn't even realize that they held, and sometimes it's kind of like trying to I was trying to use an analogy like what's the term for like when you're in jail and like you're like trying to pick through a wall, like just like little bit by bit. Like it's kind of like that. Like it's difficult to kind of like to break through to people sometimes. And I've had similar interactions where it's like yeah, I've even had similar interactions with you, I think, where I'm like, okay, like like let me just kind of help you at least understand maybe either a difference we have, or a problem I have with maybe the way you're representing something from like me or my side, or whatever. You know what I'm saying? It's like
Yeah, just trying
uh,
to get somebody to see your position, right? And so
uh,
understand.
yeah, I mean that's part, and understand where all your, because we all just, we oftentimes too, we believe things and we say things that we just kind of accept as kind of like absolute. Oh well, this is clearly like right and true, and then sometimes other people come along and say, wait, I don't buy into that construct, and let me explain why.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and I think you're right. I think we should be able to have the conversations. I think we people should be allowed to disagree. I think where the problems comes when it goes beyond that, because like we've had a history of bigotry, and like unequal outcomes because of bigotry, and then we don't want to do anything to kind of solve them. When it was a special interest taken against certain groups of people, we have to take a special interest for those groups of people in order to get things back to even. And I think that's
um,
where we probably
well,
disagree on some stuff. And see, and
well,
conservatives
yeah.
a lot of times would be I mean, that's where I get. They're like, oh, they're purposefully going after conservatives. No, they're not, man. They're going after bigots. So the fact that that Venn diagram is a fucking circle is not my fault, and it's not left's fault. It's the right's fault. you know.
Well, that's part of
What the
that's
typical?
part of. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, do you know what the word bigot means though? In
Uh,
actuality,
like hating a group of people, a person
no,
who
it
hates a group
means
of
someone
people.
that can't tolerate a person having different opinions.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. Like I say, I thought it meant somebody who's like hates a certain group of people.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's how it's usually used, but the actual technical definition is somebody that can't to- tolerate someone having a different opinion. So,
Yeah, a
like,
person who here it is, who a person who is abstinently or unreasonably attached to a belief, opinion, or faction, especially one who is prejudiced against or antagonistic towards a person or people on the basis of their membership of a particular group. So yeah, I think you are right. That is included in there. Yeah, for sure.
Uh,
That's fun.
yes,
That's funny. I didn't know that.
it's
I thought that meant like bigot was somebody who hates a group of people. Like anti-Semite or something.
well, that's the way it gets used. It's like the word irony. Nobody uses it properly anymore. Most of the time, what they mean
Yeah.
is coincidence,
Yeah,
right?
just ask
Oh,
ask Alanis Morissette about that.
If there was ever a reason not to like her.
Who's a Canadian? Who's a Canadian, by the way? So
Oh,
just
that's right.
recognition.
Thank you.
She was. Yep. Hell yeah, man. She made the '90s. What are you talking about? That's
Hey,
why the
hey,
'90s were awesome.
I'm a fan. Okay, so
Me too. Hell yeah, I love
If I was
it.
proud of any Canadian musician, it would be Our Lady Peace. Okay, those guys were great. But
I do like
Yeah.
Our Lady Peace a lot.
They're solid, definitely.
I saw them
Well,
live actually. They
oh
visited
yeah.
my hometown a couple of years ago. That was one of the best shows I've seen in a long time.
Oh, here's a funny anecdote related to the Our Lady Peace thing. So whenever the song came out, like I was in, I don't know, middle school, let's say, give or take, that song "Superman's Dead." When that song
Yeah.
came out, when that song
Awesome.
first came out, well, yeah, I love the song, but I thought he was saying Superman's dick for some reason. Superman's dick, ooh I. I'm like, why is he talking about Superman's dick? Like, that's kind of weird.
I mean, not enough people talk about it, to be completely honest, because that thing should be like murdering women all over the place. But yeah, no, that's too funny. I could see how you got there too, for
That
real.
takes it to a whole other. That would have been a very different song. That's right.
Oh, that's great. Well, hey, thank you guys so much for coming on. This was a lot of fun. It's always a good time just to not really, like I said, like we don't really do debates. I like try to just hang out and talk, and that's it.
I was going to say, Dallas, it was almost, I think it was just over a couple of years ago, you and I did a debate with the Felicia and Amy, too. That just came up on my.
Yeah, and then on their podcast, they went and like talked trash about, oh, we totally destroyed them, like they're so stupid, like come on now. It's like first off, that's not true. Secondly, like I don't know. It's just so low. Like it's such a low blow to be like without people being able to defend themselves. It's like yeah, it's easy to call someone's ideas or views stupid when they're not there to defend themselves.
Yeah, I mean that's true. I mean, I think a lot of people do like debate reviews and stuff like that. I don't know if they were
Yeah.
saying, I remember that was like the first episode that I was actually mentioned on like there, and we actually became friends because of that. Because I was the one that would like told Felicia she should do it. And I was like, you should go do a debate, and so she mentioned that on Secular too. Oh, and Brentley said that from Unapologetics said that I should do this. I was like, oh, that's cool. Hey, it's like Robert messaged me. He's like, you just got name dropped on Secular Soup, and I was like, holy shit, really? I was like, that's awesome.
Interesting how there's all these connections, like 6 degrees of separation.
Right? How weird.
Right? Are you the Kevin Bacon in this scenario?
Yeah, I guess I am. Somewhere in there.
The glue that holds us all together. We just didn't realize it.
Just didn't know it, Well, thank you. Thanks everybody for watching. And thank you again, Chris and Dallas. And we'll definitely have to have a part 2 of this because there's just too much to get to and just nowhere near enough time.
For sure.
But all right, y'all.
Take care.